o. No, c'est pas.
Liberia. There is a lot of expectation as to what he's going to accomplish. There's a lot of expectation on the side of those who voted for him and even those who did not vote for him. It can be recalled that when President Tubman took over from President Tubman, the expectations were high. At the end, President Tubman was assassinated, and that President Doe came to power. When he came to power, the songs that were being sung was, "Our eyes are open, no more corruption. In the cause of the people, the struggle continues." There were high expectations as well. That rule also ended in a tragic faction with President Taylor being elected in 1997. The expectations of returning the country to a peaceful rule were so high. Then came President Sirleaf. The expectations of a peaceful president, the first female president, was very high. This time, George Weah has ascended to power through a democratic elections. Expectations evidently are very high. So we are here to discuss managing expectations under the Weah presidency, focusing mainly on the human sector. That's the human beings that are going to work for this administration. To us to discuss this is Dr. Emmanuel Dolo. Dr. Dolo is an economic and social development expert. He worked with the Liberian government. He also worked with Metal Steel. And Dr. Dolo will be calling from Liberia to discuss this very important topic. Dr. Dolo, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Right. Dr. Dolo is, as I said earlier, he's an international social and economic expert. He has worked for the government of Liberia, WHO, Metal Steel, the University of Minnesota, UNICEF, and several other institutions. He has his undergraduate degree in economics and communication, his master's degree in economics development, also a master in divinity, graduate certificate in social policy and leadership development, and a doctorate in social development policy and minor in youth policy. Dr. Dolo, the expectations are so high. Quite recently, you wrote an article, Managing Expectations. So before we even go any further, just talk to my viewing audience briefly. Who is Dr. Emmanuel Dolo?
Well, I think much of what I am is what my parents reared me to be. I don't think when people ask those kind of questions, they're looking for you to make a business case for your education or your experience. I don't think those things qualify for explaining who I am. I'm the son of a market woman and a security guard who work for Lamco. I am the nephew of a woman who's still living in the States, who took care of me as her son, my mother's younger sister. I'm the brother of a young woman who's probably on this program, Yakweye, who has been there for me all along. So I don't know if you're looking for an academic credential to explain who I am, and I'm a friend of a whole host of people who come from a variety of different backgrounds. I'm also a person who has empathy for young people, who has employed at least 27 and 28 of them here locally in my own company. So if you're asking that question to ask for my credentials, we can talk about credentials, but I'm not so caught up on credentials. I'm caught up on what your life is. I'm a Christian who profess Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. I think that's the most important thing I need to say.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Dolo. And that's important for me as well. I think I read some of your academic credentials, so that is good. But quite recently, you wrote an article that I liked, and it says, Managing Expectations, the Most Critical Challenge Facing the George Weah Presidency. In that article, you talk about our people having some sort of fantasy, or even some form of delusion as to what the Weah government is going to do for them. If you don't mind, please expand a little on that article and what really, when you say managing expectations under the Weah presidency, what are you talking about?
Okay. First, I think the tendency has always been in this society, I don't think this affects Weah alone. When a new president takes over in Liberia, the norm is for us to have a different expectation of them. What set the president-elect Weah apart from most of his predecessors is that Mr. Weah, or President-elect Weah, has a constituency that is different from almost all of the previous presidents. He's also accomplished a feat, which I think is something that probably no one in Liberia's history has accomplished. We've always wanted a democracy in Liberia, but we always wanted a people's democracy in Liberia, a populist one. I think some of the populist movements, Moja and Pa, were seeking to achieve this. And they were trying to do this with an ideology sort of embedded in it. What Senator Weah, now President-elect Weah, achieved was that feat that they wanted to accomplish, a populist government, but he did so without an ideology. He did bring about a change which many people didn't think he could achieve. Now, the people who were in the vanguard of his movement, and, let me just make this other correction. There's a tendency for us to think that he accomplished this with a political party. As a keen observer of the social sciences, I think he did not accomplish this as a political party, as part of a political party. He accomplished this as a part of a movement. And there is a clear distinction between running a movement and running a political party. People came to that movement because many of these young people could buy their own T-shirts and market CDC. They saw this person as one of them, somebody originating from Gibraltar, somebody coming from one of the slums and ghettos of Liberia and reaching the highest height that you could achieve in the country. So under the auspices of that, they built an expectation that had not been satisfied by previous governments, including the one I worked for. They expected for many years that someone will come on the scene with sort of a Christ-like zeal, a messianic zeal to save them. That happened. But, and this is the most important point, when your expectations are extremely high that this person is going to provide jobs for everyone, when the expectations are that all of the challenges that have accumulated over the years, this person is going to put them to rest. There is a difference between campaigning and governance. And you also have to understand the population that we're talking about. That population is made up of, and it is a derogatory term that I wouldn't use here. We call them by a name. I prefer to call them street-absorbed youth. These young people, who many of whom are drug addicted, many of whom fought in the war, who were generals in the war, whose lives and roads have been reversed since they fought in the war, many of whom are homeless, and a variety of different challenges, have now seen one of them emerge as president of Liberia. So they've come to this process with a whole host of expectations that they've accumulated over the years, and they're looking for President-elect Weah and his Vice President-elect Joel Howard Taylor to help them solve those problems.
And Dr. Dolo, those expectations are not unrealistic, are they?
Say that again, please.
Those expectations are not unrealistic, are they?
Well, the question is whether you have sufficient public resources in a government that's in recovery, and whether you have the political will to be able to respond to the needs and all of the other needs that the country has. And whether or not our structures, our systems and our structures are ready to accommodate their needs, because their needs are multiple. Their needs are undiagnosed and untreated mental illnesses. Their needs are jobs, but remember, some of them are unemployable. And not only because they don't have skills, but whether or not they have the appropriate attitude to be able to work. And here we are in a country, we have only one mental health treatment facility. Here we are in a country, when you ask for a job for one person, 100 people show up for that one job. So again, their expectations themselves might not be unreasonable. But whether or not government can satisfy their concerns, their needs, makes this expectation unreasonable.
Right.
Now, when you say the expectations are unreasonable, it doesn't mean that government cannot solve. And that's why in this article, I suggested some ways in which the government can solve those problems.
And I want us to quickly go to those ways in which our government can solve those problems, because this government is new and is, I don't know how much is in its coffers, but it's inheriting an economy that is not so strong.
Agree with you. But just because the economy is weak does not mean that the will of the international supporters of this government is weak. It doesn't mean that you cannot create structures to serve this particular population. About maybe 3 months ago, my company, which is called the Center for Liberia's Future, did a study on this very population. We visited with them in all of the settings where they live. We identified their needs. We identified a location on the highway going to Buchanan. If you're familiar, or your listeners are familiar with the Buchanan Highway, there was an old Road Maintenance Institute site. We identified that site as a place where these young people could be placed and provided treatment, as well as given job training opportunities. So the strategy would then be that those who have been diagnosed with mental illness or who were drug addicted will be treated, and after they were treated, they would then be given job skills, and afterwards be placed in specific jobs and supported by their families, so the family system can support them, because the family system in Liberia is weak. We do not have a family policy. We are one country, one of few countries in the world that does not have a family policy. And when you're emerging from a civil war that has devastated the family system, the communal family system, where you had means through which people who had difficulties could sort of be treated or supported and sometimes punished by the family system, we don't have that anymore. And so we needed to create at least an incubator where these young people who go through all of these different structures to help them, bring them back into the community that we once had.
Right.
And so we did this, and it was with the support of the WHO. And so that document is provided to the Ministry of Youth and Sports, the Ministry of Health, and some of the other international agencies who are willing to support this venture. And hopefully this new government will inherit that. But it was not done under the auspices of government by it was done by my organization as the contractual work that we did for the WHO.
Great. So right now you you have spoken eloquently about the youth population, or those that you call those that are merely in the streets. Now, that's the expectation. That's their expectation. We also have the professionals, those who have worked for the campaign, those who have crossed over from other parties, and even professionals in the United States and other places. They too have expectations. How do we manage those?
I discussed that. I think, all of us have lived abroad. When you've never worked in government, the tendency is for you to look at government differently. I also discussed the fact that, look, there will be people who will be coming to government as professionals from abroad, or some of the people who are here locally who've been attached to the CDC. And their expectations would be that they would easily be absorbed by this government. That expectation might not be met by this government, because the size of the Liberian government might be huge when you sit from outside, but it's not that big enough to embrace everybody. And even if it embraces you, the role you might be coming into, you may just get a rude awakening that that particular role is not something you were prepared to perform. When a country like this, coming from war, is performing at an estimated 25%, it is difficult when you come with your experience, no matter what. The weight that hangs on you for you to perform for 3, 4, 5 persons whose background may be on paper, but they may just not be prepared to do the work that they assigned, is a completely different environment. And so my hope is that our colleagues who are coming from abroad, some of our colleagues who are professionals who are thinking that they're coming to a job, and like the states where you go into a job and you're told that you're going to perform a specific task, and just that task, you need to be prepared for this environment. The work landscape here is different. You will be confronted by mediocrity. You'll be confronted by people who don't have the skills to do the work that they've been assigned. You're also going to be confronted by institutions that are weak. And you're going to be confronted by patronage. You're going to be confronted by corruption. And a whole host of things that make the system inadequate to fulfill its mission. And so as a consequence, when you're coming into government, you need to sort of reorient your thinking when you're being absorbed. And let's add this. The CDC has never had an executive leadership perch. It's not had this kind of position before. So it would come as a surprise that many of the platform documents that they wrote, they might, when they go to the transition team, they might be receiving information about government that might just be slightly different from what they expected. What's in the government's coffers? What is it ready to do? Does it conflict with the blueprint that they've laid out? Or is their own blueprint sufficient enough to deal with some of the challenges they're going to be dealing with? So, again, I think what needs to happen is to be able, and I'm using this word deliberately, to threaten those who are coming into this position with the reality of what they're going to be inheriting. Because when you take that reality and you look at it and it looks at you, you know for a fact that you're taking on a different country, and that governance is going to be totally different from what you thought it would be.
Right. Dr. Dolo, you stressed two important facts in that, in your response. One, about the size of the Liberian government being smaller than what we anticipate from the outside. You also talk about operating at a 25% capacity. Please explain more on that. When you say 25% capacity, does it mean that we don't have enough people to work?
No, it doesn't have to do with numbers. When you talk about human and institutional capacity, You're talking about people who, you're talking about the skill set, the relevant skill set that is a fit for the position that you're going into. You're also talking about whether the institutions do work. Because institutions are like human beings, and they're also made up of human beings. Say, for example, you got a master's degree in a state, and you were trained to be, say, a communicator, and now you were appointed as a communications manager in a particular entity, or a social scientist who was sent to deal with youth. You're going to have to create youth programming from scratch. I'll give you an example. There was a person on here who asked, what did I do, or what did I accomplish as National Youth Policy Advisor to the President? Let me give you some examples. Some of the rude awakenings that we had was, I went into the prison to look at how many young kids below 17 or even below 18 that were placed in prison, to find out why and what could be done for them. At the time we got to the prison, we had lots and lots of 17-year-olds who've been riding motorcycles for people within, some of them in government, some outside of government, some of them private sector folks, who were operating commercial motorcycles. These kids were being engaged in contracts when they were not at the age, the appropriate age to engage in contracts. So when you give a person a job to drive your motorcycle, your commercial motorcycle, and at night when they're driving and somebody knocks them out and the motorcycle gets stolen, the next day you grab these young people and you put them in jail. They go to jail and they stay there for 6, 7, 8 months. And some of them get sodomized in prison. We saw a whole host of them there. Now, the system, as we saw, it was not ready to be able to provide for the needs of those young people. First, for the treatment of the sodomization that they had experienced. So a vicious cycle of sodomization began. Those kids were in jail for a long time. Our court system could not facilitate their movement through the court system fast enough, the judicial system fast enough for them to get appropriate judgment. Also, the people who placed them in jail, who had taken them to the prisons or to the police system, some of them were no longer around to address their needs. So there were systems inadequacy, and there was structural inadequacy to deal with their needs. There was also a job program that we created. Went around all 15 counties and created a job program where it's called public works program. So young kids, many of whom had very low skills and didn't have jobs, we put together a program, a very large program, national program, and oversight was provided by a committee of ministers as well as led by the vice president, the current vice president, who's or the outgoing vice president. Those jobs were created for probably 7, 8 months. Many of these kids did exceptionally well in those jobs. But when you get a job, it's not just about skill. It's about whether you have all the habits, the discipline to be able to do those jobs, to get up in the morning and go to work on time, to be able to do the work for 12, 13 hours. Some of them are physical, and to be able to make very little amounts of money.
Right.
It was a very difficult job for some of these young kids to do. Some did it well, some didn't do it well.
Wow.
We also recruited some other young people who were skilled when I worked for ArcelorMittal through a program that we established for young people. We took these young people from out of colleges they were technical people, some of them IT, some of them engineers. We brought them and paired them up with foreigners whose contract we made contingent upon these kids taking their positions after they were trained enough. The first 2 or 3 weeks of these kids coming on, some of them had never had 24 hours electricity. They had a few dollars in their pockets. They were living in a place where they had never lived before. The quality of life was great. What were they doing? They were partying all night, drinking beer and hanging out with girls. Time for them to come to work, it would be exceptionally difficult for many of them to wake up in the morning. What did I have to do? I had to literally move into their building as a father figure, almost a dumb assistant, to stop them from drinking, to ensure that they got there and completed their job. Many are around the country, and some of them are in the States. But most of them ended up now leading different parts of ArcelorMittal today. So what I'm suggesting is that when you talk about creating jobs or when you talk about creating opportunities for people, you have to also deal with issues that are internal. You have to confront those pathological issues that are faced by these young people. And if you don't do it and you think, oh, we're just going to put them in a job, I'm sorry, you will get a rude awakening. So those are some of the challenges that we're talking about.
All right. Dr. Dolo, everything the new government has to do to turn things around, as you have said. For instance, if we want to increase the human capacity, all these things have to be backed by policies. You an expert on economic and social policies. First of all, before we even go into what policy can be created, just tell us, let's go back to the basics. How are policies created? You know, like a new government like this, how will they go about creating, what are the steps involved in creating a policy before we even come to the implementation?
Okay, so the first thing you do in policy development is that you first must be able to define the problem in context. So you must understand precisely what the problem is and in that particular context. Unfortunately, for most of us listening to me or those who are in Liberia, when you run a poor country like this, there is a tendency for some of your international partners to impose certain policies on you because they have the money. Some of those policies are not rooted in keen understanding of the context. So the tendency is for some of the policies to be brought from other settings and literally imposed on government. Now, if that becomes the case, that solution to the problem, which policies are supposed to be, may not solve your problem. But if you're going to develop a project or a program or a policy, there's something called backwards design. You start with who's affected by the problem you're trying to solve. You ask yourself, what are the problems that this person faces? And that question has to be a part of that defining process. It cannot be done by somebody sitting in Monrovia and trying to define a problem that faces someone in Southtown or in a place called Black or Sekempa. The person facing that problem. That person has to be a part of defining their problem. That's how you understand the particular context in which you face the problem. So once you understand the problem thoroughly, then you move the next step up, which is now we've got the problem. We know exactly what it is. How can we solve it? What are the solutions that have been tried before in this particular context that have failed or succeeded? And if some have failed, why? Was it because they didn't have sufficient resources? Was it because they didn't have sufficient trained manpower to implement the program? Or because they did not measure the effectiveness of the program over time? So you develop a new set of programs, but you also don't just develop one program for resolving a particular situation. You develop at least three so that you come up with an alternative. If this doesn't work, we can take this other step. Then you get those programs and you put them in place. With a smaller population, you test the program to see whether or not it will be effective with that particular population. When you test it with that population and it works, you also try to get feedback from those who are affected by the problem to see if it is solving their problem. It can't be about those who designed the problem. Much of your answers have to come from the people who are affected by the problem you're trying to solve.
Right.
When you see that it is working, then you increase the number. But one of the challenges we face in Liberia is that we do these things without data. For example, we want to reform education. But today, if you were to ask about teacher X who are teaching a course or teaching math to young students, you don't know how these kids are performing. You don't have a database on these kids, or you don't have a dashboard on how these kids are performing. And when you don't have data and you don't have evidence to guide your decision making, you're almost like you're feeling in the dark. You're walking in the dark and you're trying to find a solution.
Right.
And so
Dr. Dolo,
what we need to do is that we need to develop data to inform how we develop policy and how we refine those policies to enable them to succeed at addressing some of the perennial problems that we've had over our life cycle as a nation.
Great. Dr. Dolo, we have a minute and a half to go on break. So just within that minute, I want you to look back. You know, when I started the show, I started with our expectation from the Toro era to the current Salif presidency. There is a question here on Facebook, which we're going to talk about later. But what I want to say is, talking about policy, what has been the problem, okay, from the Toro era to the current Ellen Salif government that you work for? What has been the issue when it comes to developing policies and implementing them?
Well, I think I described one of the challenges that governments here have faced. And I think the problems that were encountered by, whether it be the Tubman administration or the Talbot administration or the Doe administration or the Taylor administration or the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration, those problems of governance will be different from one to another. You're wanting to compare a sort of a tyrannical government and a democratic government. So let me just distinguish the challenges. When President Sirleaf faced the problem of managing this country, you will know the country that she inherited, all of the Bible indicators, human indicators, all the indexes that describe whether human societies are functioning. Last 2003, I think it was the Economics magazine out of Europe, which described Liberia as one of the worst, if not the worst country to live in. That meant that the country did not have any viable indicators to explain whether it was poverty or whether it was infant mortality or many of the other health and socioeconomic challenges that this country faced. So the poverty trap that this country faced at the time, the fact that all of our institutions had failed, was a different time period. Under Talbot, he inherited a different government. He also was being passed on a touch, a mantle that was different from what his predecessor had. He inherited a government where you had a whole host of students and adults who were demonstrating against that government. He had to balance between being a sort of a democratic president and being sometimes using tyrannical tactics to maintain stability in the country. During Tubman administration, as a young child, and maybe probably just growing into my 13th and 14th, we saw a different type of governance process. So all I can say is that each of these governments you have to look at in context. And if you look at the Doe administration, you have to look at it in context of being a military government that was gradually trying to weed itself of being a military government into becoming a civilian government. So all of these governments, and then the Taylor government experiencing some of the same challenges, but each of those particular governments had different expectations to deal with. And I think if we understood the expectations that the society had created over time. Because there has been periods, even though this particular government that I served under had done a whole host of things, it failed miserably at describing to the world some of the good things that it had done. Its public relations were challenging. And so as a result, we didn't understand precisely what it achieved. One major achievement was just the cancellation of the national debt. When you had, say, for example, in the States, if somebody were to just tell you all the debt you owe, we cancel that debt, and you're now credit worthy, that makes you a different person versus what you were prior to that. Right. And I think that's what she did for this country and the more.
All right.
We can talk about that after your break.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Dolo. And if you are watching us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the expectations of the new government, that is the George Weah presidency. With me is Dr. Emmanuel Dolo. He's a social and economic development expert. We are talking to Dr. Dolo live from Monrovia. And we have a lot of questions and comments on Facebook. We're going to be addressing that right after our break. At this time, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Don't you dare go away.
No, I said that.
Welcome back to Focus on Liberia. Again, my name is Dennis Jart, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Focus on Liberia is brought to you every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Here we discuss everything for and about Liberia. Tonight we are discussing managing expectations considering the human sector. With me is Dr. Emmanuel Dolo, who is discussing this with us. And we want to go straight into our Facebook. Dr. Dolo, there are a lot of questions and comments on Facebook, and I want to jump right into it. The first question here is from Mr. Dave John. Dave happens to be my brother. That's a disclaimer right there. Can Dr. Dolo state what has been put into place by the outgoing government to serve as a springboard for the incoming government? It occurs to me that the doctor is painting a blank slate scenario in Liberia. Dr. Dolo, your comments.
Okay, so first, when you start to talk about what has been put in place, you got to look at what was inherited. You inherited a society that was completely without any systems and structures. So the first set of systems and structures needed to be put in place even before you talk about policies and practices and best practices. So here are some of the things that have been done. Number one, the Youth and Sports Ministry has built over the last 12 years, I've had a couple of ministers. And those ministers, at least 3 that I remember, each has built a relationship with international partners who have come in and helped to develop the infrastructure for providing services to the youth population. Those include developing a policy that I was a part of on vocational and technical education, number one. There was also a youth policy developed just before I entered the government. That took a long time as well as in developing, because one of the things that we deal with when you talk about really a population like the one we have, the developmental age and the chronological ages of young people are different. So when you hear about the word youth in Liberia, you're talking about a variety of different populations that wouldn't qualify for the same numbers of people in America or somewhere else. So when I am a 17-year-old boy in Liberia, or even a 20-year-old person in Liberia, up to 30-year-old, I'll be probably called a youth. My developmental age and my chronological age will never sort of meet, okay? And that's extremely important. Why is it important? When you think of a group of people who have been deprived and disadvantaged, we all look for something we call hope, something we call motivation, something we call aspiration. Okay? Without those things, the word dream that many of you Americans are familiar with, you don't dream easily. Okay? When you don't have hope, you don't have the motivation, and you don't have the appropriate aspiration. It is those things that would be able to get you out of the situation in which you find yourself. That's the internal part of addressing a person's needs. And when you've gone through a civil war of this sort and you've been recruited to fight a war and you've not gotten the appropriate education, and you come into a society like this, and the psychosocial part of your well-being has not been addressed. And when we say we are developing a policy on poverty reduction, and we don't address that psychosocial component, that's a major problem. So you asked a specific question, and I'm answering that in a long-winded way so that I can get to that point. We develop a lot of policies and institutions, for example, even corruption. There are lots of anti-corruption institutions that did not exist prior to this, that exist now. But what we lack and what this new government will need to do is now to understand precisely the problems we face and the populations it's going to be dealing with. If you're going to develop policies and practices to help young people who lack hope, lack motivation, and lack aspiration, no matter how much book talk you have, if you don't address those internal constraints and you only address the external constraints, you're going to fail, because all of the cycles of poverty, the entrapment they face, will become self-perpetuating. So what has this government done? It's created most of the infrastructure you needed. Many of the institutions, many may not be functioning at optimal level, but it has created the institutions that you need to be able to move forward. Now, it's handed the ball to this new government. How will it take those institutions and make them functional? And not only just merely functional, because it needs to be functional and it fits to the needs of the populations that is going to be targeted for addressing their problems. So there are lots of institutions that have been created, lots of infrastructure that's been created, and we can go up and down arguing about the viability of those institutions. But quite frankly, if there's going to be a legacy, the legacy is going to be that this government has created the institutions, and they now need someone to come and take the ball and make them effective institutions and make them a fit for the populations that they're supposed to serve.
Dr. Dolo, I think the question keeps coming up, and it's a repeating theme here. Wilbert Yense is saying, Dr. Dolo seems to be well informed about the situation the young people faced in Liberia, but what are the mechanisms put into place during his time with the government? And then the same question comes from Emmerich B. Nicole Jr. Emmerich is saying, Dr. Dolo, the socio-economic issues of managing expectation that is being discussed right now isn't of anything new, and you have been around for some time now. Why is it of the emphasis now than 12 years led by President Sirleaf, where you were a major player? So the same question keeps coming back. So
I think
I want you to just answer once and for all so we can move on.
Okay. Let me take this issue again. I think I described some of the things that the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration did for these populations. I said to you, this was a country that did not have a youth policy. I said to you that this country did not have a social policy. And I told you that it did not have a TVET policy, technical vocational education and training program or policy for these young people. So that infrastructure itself needed to be fixed so that you can be able to use that as a blueprint for addressing the needs of the populations that you have. So, number one, it's done that. Number two, the Ellen Sirleaf government did create programs. Now, were these programs funded adequately? No. It created programs, and so you got to look at the list of priorities. I'm not suggesting here that young people were not a priority. Let's be clear. But the job program that I described before, which meant that we went into all 15 counties and created employment opportunities for young people there, but it was public work opportunities. You can also say that under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, a lot of universities were created. I went to school in the 70s and 80s. We had only University and college and the University of Liberia. Today you have a variety of universities, public universities, as well as public community colleges. So if you were going to school in Nimba, you could stay in Nimba County and go to college at least for the first year and graduate with a skill that could make you employable. There are all sorts of private universities that have been created. So the government's role is to create an enabling environment for these institutions to be created. So it created an enabling environment. Let's be honest here. This is the first president under whom lots and lots of young people could get on radio, insult her, say everything they could say about her, and not find themselves being whisked off into some prison. So this was a very politicized environment. All of the basic freedoms that we've been fighting for many years were provided for this population to express itself. There were jobs created as well for professional young people. I told you a story of many of the young people who I took to Osula Misa, some of whom went to Firestone, some of whom went to LAC, and many other places around the country where they worked. Now, was the number consequential enough? One of the populations that was neglected, and I've said that again, and I would say it again, is the population that was street-absorbed youth. We did not do a whole host of things to intervene in the drug-addicted, mentally ill kids' lives. I dealt with some of them in my private practice, but as a government official, I don't think we did a lot for this population, and I need to admit that. So I'm hoping that I answered some of the questions that you were asking, and if you still have some misgivings, I will answer them.
Thank you. I want us to focus a little bit on the political parties. You wrote an article about Liberian political parties post-2017 elections. So as we talk about managing expectations under Judge Weir, we also want to see the role of the political parties. Here in your article, the picture you painted is not very pretty about political parties. This is what you said. It is unfortunate that Liberian society has faced challenges developing strong opposition political parties. They have not been able to resist the power of the incumbency, influence of wealth, patronage, and thus compromise the independence of such institutions. Worse, when powerful patrons have exited these parties, their near lifeless corpses have struggled to be revived. Please expatiate.
Okay. So let's clear something, because I think sometimes people misinterpret that we're targeting the Weir administration. The Weir administration can be in power for the next, and when I say Weir administration, not George Weir becoming a dictator. I think somebody raised the question when I said that we are likely to have the the tyranny of the majority. If George Weah, as a president or President-elect George Weah, decides to address the needs of the populations that we've discussed, and their needs are satisfied sufficiently, he could be president for Liberia for as long as he wants to be, and for that party in that organization. But I was also suggesting that if you look at Unity Party, for example, Unity Party faced some internal challenges during the election. There were constituencies on many sides that their needs were not being addressed in the party, and so they went on, on variety of splinter groups. Liberty Party also broke up into a lot of splinter groups as well. ANC may not have broken up into some basic different components, but it faced its own challenges in terms of the difficulty of being defeated. So when you look and you see ALP and many of the other parties, as a matter of fact, some of the people from the different parties went into the CDC. So at this juncture, you're going to ask yourself, which party is going to be the opposition party? The Unity Party is going to be dealing with the fact that it's transitioning from being the incumbent into being an opposition party. Would it be strong enough to be able to address the excesses of the CDC when it becomes the incumbent? In a democracy, you need a potent opposition that sort of brings about a constructive engagement with the existing government.
All right, we lost Dr. Dolo right there, but we're going to get him right back. But what Dr. Dolo was explaining concerning our opposition political parties, there is a tendency that when the standard bearer of the party leaves, that party is in shambles. We saw that with the TWP, or the True Work Party. We saw that with the National Democratic Party of Liberia after President Doe left office. We saw that with the NPP after President Taylor left office. And sure, we expect to see the same thing or something similar when after President Sirleaf is out of office. So that's the problem. And then we expect the opposition, a viable opposition, to be a check on the current administration. So in that case, we're going to have, so we wanted Dr. Dolo to throw more light on his article regarding that. If you are on Facebook, you can also give us your questions or comments. You can also call us on 404-300-3925 to talk to us about managing expectations. And when expectations are not managed, as I began with what I said before at the opening of the show, we always have a crisis or something close to a crisis. So it is important at this time that we address these concerns. Are we going to get everything that we need? But Dr. Dolo is going to be calling back shortly, and we're going to join him in discussing this topic. Talking with Dr. Dolo, he expressed other concerns or other issues that he brought up. That is our human capacity. So, Dr. Dolo, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I went to voice.
Please go ahead. You are live.
Okay. So, again, we need to be clear, particularly about this transition that we're making. If we're going to make this transition devoid of viable opposition parties, we're certainly going to have a tyranny of the majority. Now, that does not mean that George Weah is going to be a tyrannical ruler. What it means is that the majority party, if it does well for all of its constituents, and they remain a part of that party, given that he won a landslide victory, if the opposition parties do not give the Liberian people an incentive for them to bring about a new party, a new incumbent party, it is more than likely the CDC could govern this country in a democratic way for the next 10, 20, 30 years. Because it has majority on its side already. If it cultivates that relationship through engagement and providing the appropriate public services, and that it does not have opposition that would challenge it, would definitely have that party to lead this country for the longest.
Well, we have another question from our Facebook viewer, Dr. Dolo, and it's a long one. Let me read it. It says it talks about our legal revenue generating and economic and financial institutions. Dr. Dolo, are you listening?
I'm listening, yeah, but I'm not sure what the question is about these institutions.
Right, I'm coming to the question. It says the government did not do much in making those institutions viable. So those institutions did not gain traction under the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf government. Instead, the government was preoccupied with creating its own blueprint. As a result, our constitutional institutions were undermined and relegated at the expense of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf crafting her own path.
Okay. So, if I understand the question this person is raising, first, I think you need to understand Liberia, the economic landscape of Liberia when you make these kind of allegations. These are wild-eyed allegations without data to support it. The first thing is that Liberia is one of those countries that has depended on natural resources for its economic life. Those natural resources, iron ore, rubber, diamonds, timber, and the others, are dependent on their prices on the world market. When there are fluctuations in the world market, those institutions, the price of those particular commodities tend to drop. That means the greatest source of funding into our economy will drop as well. This has been the tradition, and if this person is listening, there is a book called Growth Without Development. It discusses this particular issue. It's written probably 20, 30 years ago when I was an economics student at the university. So when you look at this sort of arrangement, if at all we do not create new ways in which to create jobs outside of these natural resources, particularly if we don't optimize the agricultural sector of our country. If your argument was that, look, the Unity Party government did not do a whole lot with agriculture because we have green land from every part of the country that I have traveled, and I've traveled all 15 counties, I would say yes to you. Because that's a part of our natural resources that we need to be able to tap. Now, you also need to know that the culture of corruption, and that I use the word culture of corruption, is not new to this country. It's not something that you do a surgery on and then you solve the problem. Let's be honest with ourselves. Tomorrow morning, our new president is not going to stop corruption with our very weak institutions that were emerging from war. It will do a lot, I'm sure. But when you want to deal with issues of corruption, I think when we talk about corruption, we talk about it as if it is just merely taking money from somebody and giving it to the other person outside the scope of government. But there's something called waste. Okay? buying expensive cars. There's something called waste, paying people high salaries. There's something called waste. When what you're paid for, you don't have the skill to produce that. I don't think any government can just intervene in those things because there have been traditions that are embedded in our society. Patronage has been a part of our culture for the longest. Okay? So these are not things that you cut off the limbs and then they stop. So I think we need to be a little bit realistic about these things when we speak of them because, yes, when you sit in America, it looks great to say these. But the systems and structures that we have, we're going to have to change them over a long haul. My hope and my prayer is the new government will make some significant changes and pick up from where this government stopped. But I hope that all of this conversation is not about denigrating the Salih administration that it did not do well. I'm not sitting here as a representative of the Salih administration or a spokesperson. I'm sitting here as a Liberian who loves Liberia, who is patriotic to Liberia, and want to be realistic about the challenges, the perennial, the long-lasting challenges that we face as a people. And solving them will not be by pointing fingers, but creating a critical mass. And I want you to hear this. A critical mass of those of us who train abroad, willing to risk everything and pack our bags and come back home so that we can do better. Now, when you sit in America and you criticize a country that lacks trained personnel and is suffering from brain drain, we need to have brain gain. And the only way we can do that is you train people come and even open your own businesses. You don't have to work for government. I don't work for government. I haven't worked for government for the last 3 years. But I've been employing young people in my own business. And how did I start this business? Please don't go on the tirade of saying, oh, yeah, he stole some money from government. Let me make sure that you understand this. I never took a salary from government. I was paid by Oslo Vitar and loaned to the government to serve, to do public service. No, let me finish, please. Public service. And the next portion of my salary was paid by the World Health Organization. And then I wrote a grant proposal to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to do research here and was able to employ at least 25 young people. You can do the same. You can leave America and come to Liberia and pick up and start to build an enterprise, and you can employ a lot of young people. So let's not just throw things. The challenge is back to you guys. Get on the plane and come back and let's start working.
Sure. All right, you got a spot there for me. Okay, Dr. Dolo, we are almost out of time. And so I want us to we'll be breaking down the curtains in 1.5 minutes. So as a social development policy expert and also a youth policy expert, I just want you to give your final thoughts and your final advice to the incoming administration regarding what needs to be done to move Liberia forward. And if you have any closing remarks, 1 minute, please.
My closing remark would be simple. One of the challenges that every government would face is to vet the people you're bringing on board appropriately. A lot of people come with credentials, and they don't come with experience. A lot of people come on board with credentials, but those credentials are not well vetted. And if you bring people on board that are not well vetted, or if you just put people in positions just because they were on your side politically, you will have some significant challenges, number one. Number two, and quickly, there are lots and lots of documents lying dormant in lots of different places. Make an effort to create a repository, a person responsible to bring all of those policies under one auspices so that they can be studied and looked at in terms of what they've achieved and what they've not, so that you can take all from there. Lastly, governance. You need a strong governance commission that can help you create a blueprint for governance that is objective, that is rooted in evidence, and that can guide what you're going to do. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to my colleagues and our friends all over the world.
Thank you, Dr. Dolo, for availing yourself. It's been a wonderful discussion. I also want to thank all of our listeners and viewers. If you are watching by Facebook, television, or on the internet, YouTube, we say thank you so much for enriching the conversation. I want to thank my studio manager, Mr. Evangelist Patrick Ansa. I want to thank my producer, Mrs. Yasendi Martin-Quayen. Also, my guest relations manager and product engineer, Stephanie Setro. And from all of us here at Focus on Liberia, we say thank you for watching. Good night and God bless.